All right, so I'm gonna show my screen. Okay. Can y'all see my screen? All right, so we're gonna get started. If you need closed captions, oh my goodness, closed captions, you can do that in the bottom, and you can just turn those on. So my name is Quetzal Morales. I am the current director of communications for our sorority, and I recently graduated with a bachelor's of arts in global communications at Utah State University, and I joined the Epsilon chapter while I was an undergrad. So one thing that I did as I was an undergrad that I really enjoyed doing was I was an intern at the Inclusion Center for 2 years. So I started as a regular intern. I know, like, it's kind of weird the levels of internships that there are, but eventually I became a senior intern, and I worked with multicultural programs at Utah State. But one of like the demographics that I worked with was the Latinx Student Union, the Black Student Union, the Asian Student Association, and I help with other things around the center. The Native American Student Council, the Queer Student Alliance. So I kind of like got my toes in the water for every demographic, and it was like something that I really enjoyed. So one thing that my supervisor asked me to take on as I was an intern was create an Undocually training, because we felt like there was no visibility for undocumented like students at Utah State. So we wanted to create something that was inclusive and that could also keep in mind that we had undocumented students on campus. So one thing about me, I have DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and I try navigating the higher ed system as like a documented person. So in the state of Utah, we have the HB14, which is you get in-state tuition even if you're undocumented, and you have to attend a high school or like a middle school or any like education system here in the US for at least 3 years in order to be able to receive in-state tuition. So I didn't know that that was a thing. So my first semester, I went to a local community college, and they actually helped me like figure that out, and I paid in-state tuition. So I eventually transferred to a 4-year university, and they didn't know what I was talking about when I went into the admissions office and also the financial aid office. So this is why this particular training is really close to my heart, and this is why I put so much thought into it with my supervisor, Luis Rodriguez at Utah State University, and my coworker, Gray, who was also an intern. So we're gonna get started. So serving the undocumented folks and becoming an Undocually. So like I said, this was created at Utah State University. Oh my goodness. This is just not working for me. I'm sorry. So one thing that I want to define is the term undocumented. So it is somebody from a foreign country who enter the US without inspection or fraudulent documents. So basically like just coming in through like crossing the border and stuff like that, just to put it into perspective. Enter with proper authorization but violated the terms of their status. So some people come with like work permits and stuff like that, but then they violate what the basically the rules to have those documents are, and they lose their work permit or whatever like documentation they had, and they still remained in the US. So fun fact, majority entered through the proper channels. So they come here with like a tourist visa, work visa, and they just overstay it. So an estimated of 55% of undocumented immigrants just in the US enter with proper paperwork. So a lot of people are like, well, we need to like build the wall or do such and such. And that's kind of not it. They don't realize that a lot of people actually do come here the right way. So they tend to like just overstay whatever permit they came with. Also, this is something that I didn't know till I actually put this Undocually training together. Being in the country without proper documentation is a civil infraction, just like a speeding ticket. So a lot of people like criminalize being undocumented in the US, like it's such a bad thing, but honestly, it's not that big of a crime. And it's honestly not a crime because a lot of people are coming here for a better life and better resources that they're escaping like the violence in their countries and things like that. So it is not a criminal act. So when people say that it's a criminal act, please correct them. So one thing that I want to break down is the demographic in the US of undocumented people. So as of 2017, there was a decline in unauthorized immigrants. So mostly because Mexicans stopped immigrating and there was an increase of immigrants from Central America and Asia. So one thing that in a study that was done by the Pew Research Center, they realized that Mexicans stopped so they would come to the US like kind of like save money and like get all this bunch of like things that they could take back to their families. They would go back to their home country, and a lot of them had like got what they came here for, so like to build a house back in their home country, and then they just stayed back in Mexico. So as you can see in this little pie chart, this is like how like the immigrants in the US, so 45% are naturalized citizens, and then 27% are lawful permanent residents, and then there's a small percentage of 5% who are temporary lawful residents. So that leaves us with the 23%, which are unauthorized immigrants, undocumented folks. So this is like broken down by, let's see, like looking at this, it is also broken down. It's mostly Latinx people, but there is also like a good percentage from Europe, so 13%, 13% from the Middle East, and then there was like 4% from North Africa, and then another 3% from South Africa countries. So that's something to keep in mind, that there's like a melting pot within the undocumented community. And then these are the estimates right here. So 25 come from Mexico, 10% from the Caribbean, and then 8% from Central America, and 7% from South America. And then I did do a little bit more of research as in why they're coming to America, and the 25%, like the vast majority of Mexican undocumented people just come here for better resources and for a better like chance of giving their kids a better future. And the Caribbean, same thing. But a lot of Central Americans are actually leaving their home countries just because they're escaping violence and gang-related things, and also they're escaping like a corrupt government. In a lot of countries, a lot of like immigrants are just running away from the unfair and corrupt governments in their home countries. And then 7% of South America, actually a lot of them overstay their visas because there is a J1, so it's called the J1 visas. So a lot of what do you call it? A lot of tourists come. So they're seasonal workers. They're like college students, and they come to the U.S. to like help with work and stuff like that, like seasonal work. And then after some of them tend to overstay their visa. So I found that really interesting. And then move on to, so this is kind of like the breakdown of undocumented immigrants in the US. As you can see, Texas, New York, Florida, and California being the bigger ones. They have over 500,000. And then there are like followed by a few others. And it's slowly growing, but like I said, there's a decline with Mexican immigrants versus like Central American immigrants. So, okay, so important terms to know when it comes to working with undocumented people. So the term undocumented is a term used so you can address like the experiences of undocumented folks without dehumanizing them. One term that I am not a big fan of is illegal alien. That dehumanizes people, and it is used in government forms. But when you're talking to people, please don't use the term illegal alien. It's dehumanizing, and it's also a government term. So and people like don't feel comfortable. Like personally, when somebody uses that word, I know that it's just not. I shouldn't probably like be telling them my story. So and then another one to know is Dreamer versus Documented. So the DREAM Act is not the same thing as Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, although a lot of people that have DACA do consider themselves a dreamer. So the DREAM Act is, it has been introduced and denied in, hold on, I have the numbers here, denied 6 times. So it's really interesting, like there keeps being a push in Congress and Senate for this to be passed, but it can't get through Congress. So it is a plan to create a path for citizenship for anybody that attends a higher ed institution and people that join the Army. So I'm not sure how the Army and immigration are, so that's something that I need to look into. So I cannot answer any questions when it comes to that. And then also it allows people that, so deferred action holders actually pay taxes, a lot of taxes. They pay for 401k, they pay for Social Security, but they cannot claim any of that. So by allowing the DREAM Act, they will be able to claim those benefits. So, and they could also like receive federal aid. So that's one thing to like keep in mind. DACA and the DREAM Act are not the same thing. So DACA was actually an executive order implemented under the Obama presidency, and this has been a battle with President Trump, unfortunately. So as of recently, this actually it used to be a 2-year work permit. So it gave people that have DACA like a Social Security, so they could like get driver's license, they could apply for like in the states that there's not in-state tuition, they could apply to like go to college and then like do other things that citizens can do, but they cannot claim any federal aid under that. So there are a few things that people have to fit under in order to even be able to apply for DACA. So one of the things is you have to be under the age of 31 as of June 15th of 2012. So if you're older than 31 and you had been in the US forever, you could not apply for that. And this is mostly for people that were brought here when they were kids and they did not have an option, obviously. Also, you had to be in the US prior to your 16th birthday. And then obviously you cannot have a felony. And as of March of 2020, there were 645,000 dreamers, DACA holders in the US. So they're two different things, but I'm just gonna stop like here for a little bit. Does anybody have any questions? All right, I'm gonna continue then. Okay, so a little bit more on historical context. So there are policies that restrict and allow immigration. So a lot of these policies, to even be able to be, to apply for like citizenship or anything like that, you need to have a family member. So whether that's your dad, your mom, or a sibling that has like the citizenship, so you can apply for it. And so that's something to keep in mind. Authorized and unauthorized immigration has been shaped by codependency on low wages and hard labor of immigrants. So there are a few things that have happened in history. So I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with the Bracero program that happened in 1942. So this particular program allowed like mostly Mexican men to come into the US and work like hard jobs such as like work in the fields. You could also work in like factories because as you know, like there was World War II around this time, so they did not have the men labor because a lot of them were at war. And women were taking jobs and stuff like that, but they did not have like this, like apparently the strength to like do a man's job. So that's why they brought in Mexican men to work into the fields and the factories. So they're considered guest worker programs. And then there is the H-2B temporary worker program. So it is a one-time occurrence. So like, for example, you could like come here for a year or two and then like do some research and then you can go back to your country. That's an example of that. Seasonal need, like the one I was talking about, the J1s. So college students from South America come into the US during seasonal times and they work seasonal jobs. And then the peak load needed and intermittent needed. So they take advantage of immigrants and they pay them really low wages in order to get the job done, which is, in my opinion, it's unethical, but we're not going to talk about that. So the sector of the US population views immigration as a threat to America, especially during difficult economic times. So as we can see, we've heard presidents, we've heard senators, and even Congress people and like local people, like local officials say they're taking our jobs. So when the economy in the US, usually it's going down, they tend to blame immigrants and they fear that they're gonna take their jobs and they're gonna like take their resources, which in reality, if you're undocumented, you cannot claim any federal aid, any social security, anything like that. So that's a myth. Let's just break that. And then they also fears that have led to several national and state policies that contribute to anti-immigrant climate. So the state of Arizona, there was a period in time, I forgot what the time was, but where they could stop like anybody that looked undocumented and basically ask for their papers. And that like put fear into people, which was it was like a scary time for a lot of people like in border states because they thought that this was going to happen. So a lot of people migrated to the north. And then I have a little bit more research on that and like a few more articles that I'm happy to share with anybody that wants those. Another thing to keep in mind is the contrast to restrictive policies. So there are states that actually people can get driving cards, and some of those states are the state of Utah. Like I said, you can get it's not a driver's license, but it's a driving privilege. The state of Kansas, there was a few others in there that I don't recall. Washington, D.C. So if you were to be pulled over, you can show them your driving privilege and you can just get a ticket and go on about your day. And you don't have to be like locked up or whatever. So that's one thing that's like really good, that people don't have like a record. If they were to like be pulled over, they just have like that on their driving record. There are also 17 states that provide undocumented students with the opportunity to pay in-state tuition. So like I was saying, in the state of Utah, we have both of those things, luckily. So there's like the HB14, where if you attend like a institution, you for 3 years in the state, you can get in-state tuition when you go to college. And then there was also a law passed that you cannot deny K through 12 education. So this was actually a Supreme Court case, and it was Plyer versus Doe. So it protected students under the clause of the 14th Amendment. So that's why the Supreme Court is important to a lot of immigrants and undocumented people, and it plays a big role into their cases. Because I believe there has been a couple cases that do end up in the Supreme Court, and DACA being one of them right now. That went to the Supreme Court, and people were waiting on their ruling. So now the ball is in the Congress court. So that's something to kind of like be looking for updates for. Also, one thing to keep in mind, a lot of undocumented students, for those that are in education, they are more vulnerable to drop out or not pursue higher education, because a lot of them have like norms that they have to follow within their family. So some tend to like just graduate high school and then go get a job that pays good, so they can go help their families. And then they're also more vulnerable if they were to attend like a higher institution. They're more likely to drop out or take like long breaks because they have to work in order to be able to pay for college, because they cannot apply for any federal aid. And there are scholarships that are private that they can apply for, but one thing to keep in mind, those are really competitive and not very many, there isn't very many of them. So if you work with students, something to keep in mind and to better assist them. So let's move on to the next part. So this is my favorite part. I've done this training a few times, and I had people ask me, why can't they just come the right way? All right, I'm gonna get in my soapbox because we're about to I'm gonna show you this little graphic of where you have to start. And as you can see, all the red signs are like ways, like it's basically like a stop. And I have the copy of this. I'm more than happy to email this out because it's really blurry. I couldn't get it to fit in the whole thing. But it's basically where you start. And then like I said, if you don't have somebody in your family that has citizenship, then that's kind of a big no. That's where you stop. So you have to like wait for immigration reform to come or anything like that. So your hopes are basically in the hands of the Senate and Congress. So yeah, when people say, why can't they just come the right way, send them this and then make them understand that it's not that easy. I personally feel like our immigration system needs to just be being throw away and then like start over, because this isn't working for anybody and it only benefits European immigrants. Fun fact. So yeah, so you're probably here, okay, we heard history, I heard the terms, but like, how can I support undocumented folks? So we're gonna get to that part now. So be a strong support system. I feel like that's pretty straightforward, but it's honestly, it can be something that makes a difference for an undocumented family or an undocumented person. So continue to like educate yourself and become a resource to them. So any resources that you have, keep adding them to your tools and share those with your coworkers or with your friends so they can share those, because I feel like that's where you start building that community. And that's one thing that so I'm from Utah, and I know like Utah's really white, but like I grew up in Park City, Utah, and it's a really liberal town. But like people are always so willing to help like the undocumented community. So they're always gathering resources, and there's like this awesome network of people that are always willing to like help the undocumented community in Park City. So if you don't have that in your community, be that person that starts that for your community, and then start sharing those resources and be the person that undocumented folks can feel comfortable going to. Another way is to look for opportunities to increase your competency and advocacy in the following areas. So like trainings and seminars, creating accessibility to resources, the spaces that you're in. What are you doing to retain the population and help their success? And then family involvement and support. And then last, becoming an effective resource of this community requires an availability to challenge or stop bias statements. So the change starts within you. I know that sounds so cliche, and it's like, okay, I've heard this like in a million quotes, but it's like, if you don't do the work within yourself, then you're not able to help those communities. So I like I'm encouraging you to challenge like any biases that you hear in professional and public spaces, and also recognizing the like biases that you might have within yourself. And then one thing that I did, I took this all, I'm more than happy to share it with people. And then at the end of the week, Liz and I will be sending a list with resources, and I'll add that in there. It's this, so I just took this test, and it basically like showed me my biases towards undocumented people, even though I'm technically undocumented. And it was like really like eye-opening, as in how many biases you don't realize you have within yourself. So kind of start there. I think if you don't know where to start, that's kind of where I knew that there was work I needed to do, but I didn't know that like how to go about it. So that particular assessment like helped me figure out where I was at and where I could go from there. Okay, so opportunities to increase your competency and advocacy. So seeking trainings and seminars. So one of my favorite ones is UnitedWeDream.org. I'm gonna plug that so hard because I love it. It's like youth led. It's really cool. Like it's a bunch of like college students and even like high school students that put stuff together, and then they work with like younger professionals to put out this information. And then they have petitions that you can sign to help undocumented people. You also have like there are networks that undocumented people can join. So there's like a path on how to do that, so people can have their community outside of their own community. And it's really cool. You can also start a campaign if you feel like there's something that needs to be changed in your local, state, or even like national government in order to help undocumented people. And they have toolkits. So I'm a big fan of the toolkits from United We Dream. They have one for like, I know we have like educators in here, so they have one for educators. They have one for people that work with like people with mental health problems and stuff like that. So they have one for, because like mental health looks different in the undocumented community. And there's a toolkit for that. There's also a toolkit for like entrepreneurs that are undocumented. So many like cool toolkits. So if you have time, go look at that website. Like I said, I'm a big fan. Local universities. So a lot of local universities here in the state of Utah, we have two dream centers. So we have one at the University of Utah and one at the local community college. And basically like a lot of those places host like webinars, they host trainings, and they even sometimes like host like little workshops for people that are undocumented to how to fill out like a form that they might need with their DACA and stuff like that. So they're good resources. I would like encourage you to go like look if there's one in your local like universities, and if there isn't one, I would kind of like make contact if you went to a university there. Make contact with like undergraduates. Undergraduates have so much passion to like get stuff like this going, and kind of start that center for the community and also the students at the university, because a lot of the centers are not just for the students at the university but the local community. And then another one that I really like is myundocumentedlife.org. So this one's like good for parents. They have a lot of educational like things. So they have books that you can read to your kids. They have like things that you can like ways that you can like approach the undocumented talk with your kids. If you're undocumented, they have so many resources. They also have a lot of good webinars, and they also have scholarships for undocumented students. So if you know somebody that needs like financial help, there's a space for that. And myundocumentedlife.org has a lot of scholarships. The next one is creating safe spaces. So this allows for undocumented folks to seek resources if needed. places where they can seek legal help if needed to. So one thing to keep in mind, a lot of people don't like sharing their status. So if they come to you and they share their status, just know that they trust you. And you're a person that created that safe space for them to feel comfortable for them to disclose that to you. So a lot of the time people need like legal assistance. And I think, I can't say I'm not guilty of this, but like I tried doing it once and then I realized it was wrong. I kind of tried giving somebody like not legal help, but like I told them my experience as a person that had DACA, and I realized how wrong that was. So I stepped back and I told them, listen, I cannot give you any legal help, but I can find you the resources. I can hook you up with like the person that helped me fill out my DACA papers, and you can go from there. So like by creating those safe spaces, people are gonna feel comfortable coming to you with any like things that they might need. And sometimes some of them might have like, there's a lot of food insecurity within undocumented communities. So one thing to keep in mind is they're not gonna like tell you. Sometimes it might be like the kid that tells you, or like one of their children, just because they don't want to ask for any help, just in case there is an immigration reform, so they don't like lose that chance of having that. They don't want to say that they asked for help. So that's something to keep in mind when you're creating these safe spaces. And then another thing is the undocumented community, especially the Latinx, tends to be really collectivistic. So it's like we're all in this together. So one thing to do is like identifying like the Latinx leaders within their communities and collaborating with them. So like I think like asking them what you can do to help them, like bring resources and stuff like that. So one thing that I personally like kind of took upon myself, and this is just an example, I saw that there was a need for undocumented, like not undocumented people, but like people that actually were once undocumented and had their like citizenship, and they got all of their papers. So they were like, they're allowed to vote now. And a lot of them don't know how to vote because they've never been talked about this particular thing. So I started like a little campaign in the local community, and I asked them like if there was anybody that was going to vote for the first time ever to like reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to help them. But I ran that through a Latinx leader within that community, and she has helped me promote that. So also another thing, encouraging like younger kids to become leaders in their communities. So this is one thing that changed. I've heard from a lot of my friends that are undocumented. That's why they did it. So I don't know how many, like if there's any of y'all that could relate to this, but I remember being 7 years old, or like being like 10 years old, and then having my parents like asking me to translate like documents that were like legal documents. So I think like kids like that, that's kind of where I took this passion on. Like I'm like, I want to be that person that helps parents that don't have kids that might be able to translate this for them. Or I want to be like an older person that helps them, so kids that are 7, 10, that are like younger don't have to do this, because I remember doing that for my parents. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I felt like a lot of pressure was put on me as a younger little girl. So encourage kids to like become involved in like the community, invite them to volunteer. If there's like a networking event, invite high schoolers to it. I think like getting their toes in the water to like leadership experiences, it helps them a lot, especially like especially like in Latinx communities. I feel like if you're seen as a leader, then people are going to follow. And that's like the amazing thing about having like a little like community, because people like tend to listen to those that do that. But yeah, so other things that you can do locally and in your state. So advocate for access to driver's licenses. Like I said, there was only 12 states that actually allow people to have driver's licenses. So, you know, this helps with road safety, creates more jobs if they have driver's licenses. They have more opportunities, because if you don't have a driver's license, there are particular jobs you cannot do, like a delivery driver, like a construction machine worker. So it allows for opportunities for them to like grow. And then also, like I was saying, so if they were to be pulled over, they would just get a ticket in their driving record, and they wouldn't like have to be pulled over and then like taken into custody. So that helps a lot for with undocumented like communities. So driver's licenses are something that we don't realize it's a privilege, but I feel like after I got my driver license, I realized how big of a deal that was. Also advocating for equal access to in-state college tuition and financial assistance. By doing this, it allows undocumented students to attend a higher ed institution, but also it allows them to break that cycle within their own families to like be able to like provide their families with other resources. So and then this is a big one. So strength in labor laws enforcement. So I don't know how many of y'all have heard, but I know that it has been an instance and like it's been national news with like some places where they don't pay people the correct wage and stuff like that. So they take advantage of undocumented workers in order to get cheap labor and not get in trouble or not pay taxes. And there's just too many like things that go behind it. And then they also take advantage of sometimes of like undocumented workers where they work them overtime and they don't pay them overtime. So that's a problem. So like advocate for those things in your communities. And then extend healthcare coverage to all children. So undocumented kids are more likely to have chronic diseases that could have been avoided due to the lack of access to healthcare. So as y'all know, the healthcare in America is super expensive. And a lot of parents have to wait like last minute till their kid feels really, really sick so they can take them to the doctor. So if we can advocate for like better health coverage for children, this will break down like the problems that come in the future for families, and it also puts a financial burden in their families. So, but that's all I have for resources or training. You can email me at my national TNX DOC Gmail. And then one last thing, I do want to plug this real quick. So I have a friend, her name is Sierra. Her and I have been working closely to like put out this little sticker. So I explained to her the importance of the monarch butterfly for undocumented people and how like the monarch butterfly migrates anywhere from Canada to the US and what it means to people. So I told her to like make something like this, and 100% of the funds that she collects are gonna go to KIND. So it's a organization. It's called Kids in Need of Defense. So it allows like to have kids that don't have like the representation in courts and stuff like that are defending themselves in courts through like legal cases of immigration to have that person to help them. So it's a really cool organization. You should look it up, and you can go to her Instagram or her Etsy shop down here, Femme de Cal. And I order a few stickers already for myself, but I'm just gonna plug that out there. But if you all have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those.
I have a question. This might be like too involved. I don't know. But I have known a number of people who had US citizenship and then married someone who was undocumented, and it's like a nightmare to try to get them status. And I'm just wondering if you know more about that, like why when someone is within status and marries someone with US citizenship, it's not that it's easy, but it's very doable. And then someone who has US citizenship and then marries someone who is not in status, then it's like so crazy hard to get that person's status, like takes years and so much, and it's really complicated. Why is that?
I think it like varies from like, and I'm not like legal expert, so I'm just gonna throw that out there. All of the things that I like put out in the what do you call it, in the presentation were things that I actually researched, and I ran it through a lawyer just to make sure I was getting the accurate information. But so I've heard personal stories, but I think it varies from case to case, because I've had friends who had to go through this process, and it took them like less than a year, and I have other friends that has taken them up to 3 years. So I think it varies per case.
Yeah, it's just something that I've been thinking about and wondering about, but I'm sure there's a lot to it.
Yeah, yeah, but that's something like to keep like I don't know, keep in mind. And that's one thing that I like actually wanted to like do more research on. But like my main squeeze is like personally like higher ed and like education and how it impacts like undocumented students. Yeah, I wish we could keep it simple. It's the immigration system with the US is just, oh my goodness. If you look at other immigration systems around the world, you can see the difference, and it just blows my mind. But okay, does anybody have any more questions? I'm happy to answer those, or any comments.
I have a question, Ketzel. It's Lauren.
Yeah.
So I work in financial aid at a private university, but North Carolina is also not one of those states that provides in-state tuition to undocumented students. I've had a few times where I've presented at high school financial aid nights, and like a mix of people show up, and there's always like one or two that the counselors like know the students undocumented, and they're really dedicated to like working with them. But I always feel like I fall short on like resources to provide them with, to point them in the direction. Because like you said, I think there's just such limited funds with scholarships. Like at my university, there's only like one donor scholarship that's designated for DACA students, but right, like the rest of them are not slated for an undocumented student. So it's like, I always feel like I fall short on providing resources. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, so I have a few websites. I'm more than happy to email those to you, that do provide like a bunch of like private scholarships for students. And I also think like if the counselor is working with them, I think also like having that relationship with the local counselors that are helping the students and giving those resources to them, so the students are ready from high school and not when they go in college and they already have to pay for all of this tuition. So like I think building that relationship with the high schools would be beneficial. I know that like my counselor in high school had a relationship with a few colleges in the state of Utah, and that helped me land a few scholarships. So doing that, and then like looking for more private like scholarships outside of just your state, because there are a bunch of national ones too, but like I said, they're limited. And maybe even creating like a financial plan with students, like hosting a workshop with the parents and the students to like kind of like create that financial plan of how to like get to the like, I guess, to the final goal of how much money they might need for college.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love if you share those websites when you get a chance.
Yes, I'll send this your way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one more, but
Yeah.
sorry to monopolize. I just was thinking, like, when you were in high school, Ketzel, like, what meant the most to you, or like, what do you wish school staff could have done to support you?
This is a good question. So I had, luckily, like I said, I was really lucky. Like I was in a community that supported undocumented folks. But like one thing that made a big difference for me is like finding a teacher that was a mentor to me, that like didn't try to like understand how I feel, but like she let me talk about my experience as an undocumented woman. And she kind of like wasn't like, oh no, I totally get how you feel. No, she wasn't like that. She was just like, I wish we could do something, but there's this much I can do to help you. So she would like provide me with like resources. She would like like connect me with other people like in the community. So there was like a lot of networking done that allowed me to like get to where I am now. But also like I feel like the fact that she actually put the effort to have a relationship with my parents, that made a huge difference for me, because my mom felt comfortable going to parent teacher conferences, and so did my dad. And we knew that if we didn't have a translate, like if I wasn't to go with them, there would be kids Latinos in Action. I don't know how many places have that, but Latinos in Action made a difference for me too. So it's a organization where like Latinx kids are part of. They do community service, they do leadership things, they also do networking, and it's really cool. So she was my Latinos in Action teacher, and she like had Latino parent nights where she could like work with my parent, like where she could work with the parents and also like get to know my parents. So like we had like a cultural night, and like we just like shared so many like little things about our families with her that it created like a bond and a community within the classroom. So I think creating the relationship with like parents, but also like not being like, I get how you feel to the student, like kind of listen to their story and understand and know that if they are opening up to you and they confide in you, then you're just there to listen and like provide them with resources. So that's like my main two things that like I feel like made a difference for me. Alrighty. Is there any other questions? All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, thank you all for coming. I'll have Liz talk a little bit more about tomorrow's event. It's going to be a really good one, and it's kind of linked to this one too. So some of the things you learned here, maybe you can bring into tomorrow's like discussion. So I'll let Liz talk about it a little bit more, and if y'all have any questions, y'all can email me. So.
Thank you, Quetzal. And just really quick, tomorrow is going to be a panel. So we asked different professionals within different fields to come share their experiences of what it's like working with undocumented and immigrant populations, in the hopes to kind of encompass different fields for those who work in different areas, but also to show commonalities when it comes to working with undocumented and immigrant populations. So we hope to see you all there. It's going to be at 7 o'clock tomorrow, Eastern Standard Time. That's the only time change from the rest of the week, is that tomorrow we are at 7 p.m. But we hope to see you. There's definitely going to be some question and answer time too. So some of the questions that you had tonight maybe could be good for tomorrow, because we'll have a immigration attorney, and we actually are going to also have a bilingual high school counselor, and then research coordinator, and human services worker, and professor. So I'm trying to remember all of them. But anyways, if you have questions about that panel, definitely let us know as well. But other than that, I hope to see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. and I'll put it back to Quetzal so she can close it out.
Thank you, Liz. I'm really excited for the panel tomorrow. And like I said, thank you everybody for taking the time. Just know that this training like means a lot to me, because it was like one of my big projects as an intern. And I'm happy like I'm sharing this knowledge with y'all. So if y'all want me to like, I have a bit more deeper like training, but I just wanted to like narrow this down to an hour. So if you want like a little bit more deeper training, just let me know. I'm more than happy to help with that. But other than that, thanks for coming, and I hope y'all have a lovely night.